Hi everyone, I'm Felipe Rosa, and today I'm gonna explain this system with focus on HR management. Here we have our login page. If we click on forgot password, we have a forgot password where user can write the main here and receive instructions to reset the password. It's not functional right now, but it's not so difficult to make it functional. Back here to the login, we gonna log in now. We organize here the sidebar, thinking about the user journey. So once someone log in here, the first thing is create a location. Also have a location, you can create a department, then you can create employees, and then you can have details, information about the employees. On the dashboard, the data that are connected to the database are employees, total employees, new hiring, recent hiring, and department distribution. The turnover and open position, according to the database that we have now, is not functional, but once we update the database, we could have this part functional. And below here, we have a space for integration with AI that could bring insights on our database as well. So all the other features here, location, department, employees, and job history, they are kind of the same structure. We can add information, we can see details, we can edit, when we can delete. I will not talk about details here about all the features, because once I explain here in the location, it's kind of the same thing for the others, except for the job history, where we don't have actions here and we don't add information. So, but in employees, we have add, details, add and delete. Departments, same thing, add, details, edit and delete. So let's go to the location. So we can add a new location here. We select, for instance, America, and we can add a new country, like new D, would be a new country in Americas. And let's locate in Toronto, Ontario, and add. So now we have here our new country. We can see the details. We can click and add it in here in details, or even in here, and change new country to New Canada. And now we have New Canada. And we can delete, and the new location is gone. Same thing department, so let's create a new department here. New department 2, just the manager will be Stephen King, and is located in Australia. Have a new department 2. We can see the details, we can edit and change department 2 to department 3, change the manager to Lex, and the location to Italy. There we go, department 3, Lex, Italy, and delete. And now we can work with employees. Remember that we don't have new hires in here, so we can go to employees. So here we can click add employees, and we can fill the name, department, job title, today, salary, and then we have new employee here. We can filter. This filters works on the other pages as well. We can see the detail. for the fields that we have. The fields that we don't have the detail. We can add it, click in here, or even click in here. We can change the title, job title for marketing, for instance, and then save. And here we have the new uh, title, job title. And if we go to dashboard, we have a new hiring here. If we come back and we find this new employee and we delete, we can see that we don't have new hires anymore. And finally, on job history, we can see the job history for the employees. So the name, the job title, the department, start date and date. And if we filter in here, like Nina, we have Nina, public account and account manager. And that's what we have for our front end. Let's see the coding. So the code is organized in a client folder and server folder. To start the client, we go to the client folder and write npm start. And to start the server, we go to the server folder and write python index.py. And we have our front end in this localhost 3000 and our backend in the localhost 5000. And once it's connected, we have the data handler. Let's talk about the client. The front end of our HR management system application is built using React, Nivo for dashboard, and Tailwind for CSS. So we can see the in styles, we can see the Tailwind here, and Nivo for the dashboard. So the application is structured around React components, which are reusable piece of user interface. Each component in here, they are responsible for rendering specific part of the user interface and managing its all states. So as we gonna see, we have components for adding employees, deleting, editing, and viewing. We have also routing, so the application uses React router done for client-side routing. This allows user to navigate between different pages without reloading the entire page. Routes are defined on this app.jsx file, where each route corresponds to a specific component. Here we have we import all the pages that we created, and we have the routes for the pages in here. If the user is authenticated, the user is go to the dashboard and you can see all the other pages. If it's not authenticated, the user is sent back to the login page. It's important to say that in all the pages that we have here, the application uses a combination of custom components and icons from the Lustre React library to create a kind of modern and responsive user interface. If we go to the main features, we can see that dashboard is one of them, and it's the main landing page for authenticated users, provide an overview of the key metrics and a quick access to different sections of the application through the sidebar that we can see the details here on the layout. So we have the navigations right here, and we can see the links to all the options that we have on the navbar. We are mapping here on the items, and then we can have access to them. And we have the logout here from the navbar. So from navbar we can access dashboard, locations, departments, employees, and jobs. Also, we have locations, departments, employees. Each of these sections has its own page accessible via the sidebar navigation. They display data fetched from the backend and allow user to search and paginate through the records. So in summary, the structure for our client side is basically the components that contain reusable user interface components such as dashboard layout with sidebar that you use it across all the pages and navigation items. We have uh, the pages that contain pages components like employees, which renders the main content for each route. We have the service here where you can find the API.js, which I'm going to explain later. But in summary, we are using Axios as a library for requests to the backend. And here we have all the routes to the backend and to our APIs in the backend. And we have the app.js here, the main entry point for the application where routes are defined and the main layouts is set up. Now we're gonna talk about the the pages, starting with employees. All the other pages has the same kind of structure, so I believe that explaining employees, it's kind of possible to understand all the other pages in terms of structure. The employees JSX component is responsible for displaying and managing the employee data. It includes features like searching, filtering, pagination, and CRUD operations through models that we also have the same departments and locations and jobs and so on. Here we have the rect hooks. So use state and use effect, states right here, and use effect to manage the state for employees, departments, locations, and user interface elements like models and messages. Just remembering the concept that React hooks, such as useState and useEffect, are used for managing component state and side effects. This allows components to maintain their own state and react to changes in the data. Following here, we can fetch employees and departments on component mount. So on component mount, it fetches employees, departments, and locations using the employee service, department service, and HR location from API.js that we are importing right here on this line. We also have the models across this page. So we have models for here, instance, add an employee. We have models for viewing, edit, and deleting employees. These models are managed through state and handlers like handler add employee right here and handler edit employee. And finally, we have in this main part in here above the pagination, and you have a table of content and header, a kind of grid layout to display employee information, include names, department, job title, and status. And we provide a feedback that we have successful or error using messages. Okay, so from here, we have access to models. Let's talk about models. The add employee model components used to add new employees to the system. We have this add-in components on department and also on location. Here on this add employee model, it provides a form for entering employees details and handle the form validation and submission. We also have rect hooks, use state and use effect to manage data, errors, and loading state. We have a form data that holds the input values for the employee's details, and we have an error that stores validation errors from the field. So here we have the use effect that I was talking about, and the validate form. We set handle the errors in here, and right here we organize the data to send to the API. And if we have success, we reset the form. Otherwise, we return error to the user. Below, we have the structure of our form. This is the same structure that we have in in the other models. So for delete, you have the connection to the backend, to the API.js to delete. We have the connection to the update, and in viewing, we have the opportunity to get the information from the users using the get by ID. We have the opportunity to get information from the users using get by ID, because when we click on a row to see the details from one line, we get the ID of the employee on this line, and we use this ID to get the details from this ID from the back end. So now let's talk about the connection between our models and the API.js. In the API.js, we set up an Axios instance to handle HTTP requests to the backend API. It includes configuration for basic URL, headers, and interceptors for requests and response handling. We can see here that we create an Axios instance with a base URL. We configure the first part here, getting data from the env file. Otherwise, we use the localhost as a default, and we set the header as a content type to application slash JSON for all requests right here. Also, we have interceptors in here. So we have the request interceptor here, which is responsible to add an authorization header with a token for the local storage if available. And we have an interceptor right here, which is a responser interceptor that handles common errors such as unauthorized access by cleaning the token and redirecting to the login page. After that, we have our API servers for different endpoints. So we have here for the login, so login, register, and logout. And for the employees, we have get all, get by, ID, create, update, and delete, and similar for department and job service and job history and HR location. So the alt service right here, it handles the authentication related requests. As I said, login, register, and logout. Employees manage the employees related requests, including fetching, creating, updating, deleting employees. Department service manages department related requests. Job service, job related requests. The job history related requests, and HR location related requests. One last point that is interesting to talk about here, it's the dashboard that has slightly different structure from the employees and the other pages. So let's talk about the dashboard. So the dashboard JSX component provides an overview of key metrics and insights for the application. It displays the statistics, department distribution, recent hires, and could display AI-powered insights. It also has reactive hooks, use state, and use effect to manage loading states, errors messaged, and data for statistics, department, and recent hiring. Well, here we fetch data for employees, departments, jobs using services from API.js. And below that, we calculate metrics like total employees, new hires, and could be turnovers and open positions that we can render in the front end. For that, we have a stats card component for visual presentation right below and here. So this stat card is for the visual representation of our statistics. And then we can show the data right here below. So if we like to see the total employees, you just get the data calculated and access the total employees, and we render using the total locale string. That is what we have for our client side. And now we're gonna talk about the connection to our backend, the server side. Our backend, our server side is structured to handle API requests, manage database interactions, and provide data to the front end. The key components on our server side is the index file right here that acts as the entry point for the server application and configures routes and initialize the service right here. We also have the application directory here with routes and uches, and on routes you're gonna see later we have the routes for the API, and on DB uches we have the queries for our database. And in summary, our app folder contains the core application logic and manage the business logic and the data processing. Finally, we have the .env file, which stores environment variables such as database credentials and API keys. It ensures sensitive information is kept secure and separated from the code base. And we have the requirements txt that lists all the Python package required for the servers to run and is used to set up the virtual environment with the necessary dependencies. And now I'm going to start talking about the index.py. The index.py acts as the entry point for the server application. It configures the Flask app, including core settings and command lines command for database initialization and seeding. Here we use the environment variables to determine the configuration, and we set up cores to allow requests from specific origins. So if we try to deploy, for instance, in Vercel, we deploy the front end and the back end, and to make them exchange data and allow requests, we have to set up cores. And here we have, for instance, to say that, oh, this is our front end, and then the cores will allow this request from this 3000 local hosting, and the same for the page, the front end page that is hosting, for instance, in Vercel. We also have here the database initialization, which is we provide the CLI commands to initialize right here the initDB and the seedDB, the database with initial data. That's it for the index.py. And then from here, we can see the apps. So once initialized and working our index.py, we have, for instance, this alt routes that is responsible for manage related routes, manage authentication related routes, including login, registration, and fetching the current user. But because we actually don't have real data on the database related to user in terms of validation, we can go through this part here just to showing that we have the login route, we have the register, and we have get user, current authenticated user that we send to the front end so we can go through the pages authenticated. But the most important part here to show, I think, is the employees route, which is again, it's kind of similar to the department and countries and locations. They are all the same structure. So what we have in here on the employee route, it's the code that manages the employees related routes, including CRUD operations. So here we get the employees data. So we fetch all employees and returns in a JSON format right here on this get. So get all employees using direct connection approach. We have this get routine here. We also have the the second option that we get employee by ID, where we fetch a specific employee by ID, return a for error if not found. We can create an employee that validates input and creates a new employee, return the created employee data, and we can update an existing employee information, checking the existence first. So here we are updating existing employee, direct approach, right? And finally, we can delete. So here we delete an employee, get the employee. If we cannot find, we return the error, and then we can delete and return the success message. Ensure that, and it's important to say that we delete an employee by ID, ensuring that the employee exists before the deletion. Now that we've seen the routes, let's talk about the queries that are related to those routes in here. So all the data that we are requesting in here, we need a query to get this information from the database, and all those queries are on the DB UCHUS, and then there we can find the get employees or get one employee by ID or create employee or updating or deleting. So if we go there, for instance, for create an employee, we have this query in here, which is we have a begin and ending, and inside this PSSQL, we have the search into HR employee with all the columns and then the values that is expected on those columns and what we'd like to return. And here we create a connection. We instance the cursor function. We create the parameters, and here for all those fields in here, those keys, we have those values in here that we are getting from the front end data. And so we execute passing the query and the parameters. So after that, based on the parameters, I get the employee ID value and I return to the front end this ID if you have success in this process here. So in summary, we get connection, cursor, execute, passing query parameters, and connection commit. If we have an error, we have connection rollback and raise an error. And here we have a finally cursor close and connection close. It's kind of similar to the other. So if we go to update, we have here the fields and we have the query. When we execute the query and we would like to delete, for instance, we can, we have the query, so delete from HR employees where employees employee underline ID, and then it receives the employee ID, and then if the result is true, it returns true. It means that the role was deleted. So similar, we have get department, we have create department, update department, delete department, and so on for all the options that we needed on the front end that are kind of similar to the one that we were using on the for adding employee. And that is everything that we have for our backend. Thank you.